The Toronto Blue Jays had nothing to play for on the final day of the 1998 regular season. Despite managing their first winning record since hoisting the Commissioner's Trophy for a second straight year in 1993, the Blue Jays were destined to miss the postseason once again. And with nothing at stake, the Blue Jays gave the start that day to a 21-year-old September call-up who had just made his big league debut the week prior. Little did everyone know, however, that September call-up would one day have a plaque in Cooperstown. And it was on that Sunday afternoon at Skydome that he penned the first epic chapter of his Hall of Fame career. As dominant as the Blue Jays were throughout the late 80s and early 90s, a run that culminated with their back-to-back World Series titles in 92 and 93, Toronto essentially fell off a cliff following Joe Carter's epic walk-off. Had there been a World Series in 1994, Toronto would not have won it. Not only were the Blue Jays not a championship threat in 94, they weren't even a winning ball club, mustering a 55-60 record before a players' strike kiboshed the season in mid-August. However, there was one silver lining to the Blue Jays' first losing season in more than a decade. It earned them the 17th overall pick in the 1995 draft, their highest non-compensatory pick since 1987. And with that pick, the Blue Jays selected a high schooler out of Central Colorado whose name would one day be synonymous with the franchise, a name that would eventually adorn the level of excellence at what is now called Rogers Center: Harry Leroy Halladay. Now, any high school draftee is a risk, and especially a high school pitcher, but Halladay, who went by Roy, wasted no time proving himself to be a worthy gamble. In 1996, his first full season as a professional, Halladay posted a sub-3 ERA in the Florida State League despite being almost 4 years younger on average than his competition. By the start of the 97 season, Baseball America hailed Halladay as one of the game's top 25 prospects, ahead of future big league all-stars like Adrian Beltre, Bobby Abreu, and another highly touted Blue Jays pitching prospect named Chris Carpenter. Seemingly, he had all the makings of a frontline starter. Nasty stuff, plus command, a workhorse build, and a work ethic and compete level that were off the charts. By 1998, Halladay was knocking on the door of the big leagues. Despite turning only 21 that May, he had already logged almost 400 minor league innings. He had faced older, experienced competition in AAA. He had made adjustments when things didn't go his way. And he spent that summer demonstrating his readiness, posting the lowest ERA in the AAA International League among full-time starters aged 23 or younger. Frankly, had the Blue Jays not had such a solid rotation in 98, led by an unhittable Roger Clemens, a steady Woody Williams, and an emergent Carpenter, Halladay might have gotten the call sooner. Ultimately, though, it wasn't until late September that Halladay was finally summoned to the big leagues, after rosters had expanded and Toronto's wildcard hopes were basically shot. But even though the Blue Jays season was essentially over at that point, Halladay's MLB debut on September 20th, 1998 was momentous nevertheless. That afternoon in Tampa Bay, Halladay became the 5th youngest pitcher and the 3rd youngest starter to debut for the Blue Jays. And he acquitted himself well, too. In his first big league start, Halladay allowed 2 earned runs while striking out 5 over 5 innings in an eventual 7-5 win over the Devil Rays. It was the following Sunday, though, on the final day of the regular season and in his second big league start, that Halladay laid bare his enormous potential, turning in a performance that portended the Hall of Fame career he would ultimately author. Funny enough, Carpenter was actually the scheduled starter for that day. But with the Blue Jays mathematically eliminated, manager Tim Johnson decided to give the ball to Halladay instead for his first ever start in Toronto. His opponent that day? The Detroit Tigers, a 65-win club that had one of the worst offenses in the American League. The day prior, in fact, Clemens had struck out 11 Tigers over 8 innings. Basically, it was as cushy an assignment as a rookie could hope for, and Halladay absolutely carved them up. The rookie breezed through the top of the first, racking up a pair of strikeouts while throwing just 13 pitches in a 3-up, 3-down inning. He was even more efficient in the second, needing just 8 pitches to retire the meat of the Tigers lineup in order. And after 3 innings of play, Halladay was still perfect and had yet to allow a hard-hit ball. He was pouring in strikes, making quality pitches with his entire repertoire, and ultimately leaving the Tigers hitters helpless. As Frank Catalanato, Detroit's second baseman that afternoon, told The Athletic years later, guys were coming back to the bench just saying, man, his ball is moving all over the place. He had guys off balance, and I specifically remember guys who had made contact saying, he's throwing bowling balls up there. After an 8-pitch 4th inning, Halladay was still perfect. And were it not for a Felipe Crespo error on a Tony Clark grounder in the top of the 5th, he might have had a real shot at a perfect game. But Halladay was unfazed by losing the perfecto, retiring the next 2 batters on 2 pitches before freezing Joe Randa to end the 5th.
Game to Cal Ripken, his very first Major League win. Randa takes strike 3. And the Tigers are being no-hit through 5 by the rookie Roy Halladay.
Yeah, something special was brewing. And as Halladay continued to hold the Tigers' hit list through the 6th, 7th, and 8th, the intensity at Skydome reached a level not seen in years. Suddenly, in the blink of an eye, Halladay was 3 outs away from history, from becoming just the second pitcher ever to throw a no-hitter in his second big league start. Then he was 2 outs away. Then he was 1 out away. But it wasn't Tigers leadoff man Kamara Barti who stood between Halladay and history. Instead, Tigers manager Larry Parrish decided to make things much harder for Halladay and send up a pinch hitter in Bobby Higginson, who just happened to be one of the Tigers' best hitters. Actually, Higginson finished second on the team with 174 hits that season, including 25 homers. And he would have been in the starting lineup were it not the final game of a lost season. In other words, Halladay was going to have to earn this, and he tried his best.
Hitter Bobby Higginson has ruined the no-hitter with a home run to left field.
Yeah, just like that, the no-no was over. On the first pitch he saw, Higginson spoiled Halladay's bid for history and his shutout. It was a gutting blow, to say the least. And get this, the pitcher in the Blue Jays bullpen that corralled that home run ball, it was Blue Jays legend Dave Stieb, who himself lost no-hit bids with 2 outs in the 9th in consecutive starts in 1988 and lost a perfect game bid with 2 outs in the 9th in 1989 before finally throwing the only no-hitter in Blue Jays history in 1990. You can't make that up. Still, as anticlimactic as that homer was, Halladay didn't crumble. He promptly got the next batter to line out softly to shortstop to finish off a complete game victory and one of the most remarkable performances by a rookie pitcher in MLB history. Halladay needed just 95 pitches to navigate his 8 strikeout, 1 hitter. He threw 73 of those 95 pitches for strikes, he only reached a 3-ball count once, and he was so efficient that the game lasted just an hour and 45 minutes, making it the shortest game of the season for both the Blue Jays and the Tigers. It was, simply put, a masterpiece. And to this day, it remains one of the most dominant performances ever by a newly anointed big leaguer. In fact, in the almost 30 years since, only one pitcher has posted a higher game score in either their first or second MLB start. That was Clay Buchholz, who famously tossed a no-hitter in his second career start for the Boston Red Sox. But if you thought it was nothing but smooth sailing for Halladay from that point onward, you're sorely mistaken. As auspicious as his 2-start cameo in '98 was, Halladay had an uneven first full season with the Blue Jays in 1999, then struggled so mightily in 2000 that he was sent all the way back down to Single A to essentially rebuild his delivery. Actually, his 10.64 ERA in 2000 remains the highest single season mark ever by a pitcher with at least 50 innings pitched. However, as we all know, Halladay emerged from that setback better than ever. And with his revamped delivery and mentality, Halladay proceeded to become one of baseball's most durable and dominant starters, and eventually a Hall of Famer. From 2001 through 2013, no pitcher accrued more WAR than Halladay, who won 2 Cy Young Awards during that span. One in the American League with the Blue Jays, and one in the National League after getting traded to the Philadelphia Phillies in 2009. He was also an All-Star 8 times during that span, led his league in innings pitched 4 times, and posted 3 seasons of 20-plus wins. Meanwhile, he threw the 20th perfect game in MLB history in 2010, and later that same year became the second pitcher ever to throw a no-hitter in the playoffs, the first being Don Larson's perfect game in the 1956 World Series. And in the process, Halladay became an icon for 2 franchises, cementing himself as the greatest pitcher in Blue Jays history and one of the most indelible Phillies pitchers of the 21st century. Notably, when he was posthumously inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2019, his plaque did not have a team logo on it, a gesture of his and his family's gratitude towards both franchises. There's no debate, however, as to when the legend of Roy Halladay began in earnest. It was on a September afternoon in Toronto in 1998, when he turned an otherwise meaningless game into history. Thanks for watching. If you like this video and want to see more content like this, hit that subscribe button.